Let's talk editing. So, when it comes to editing a story, a manuscript, what it really comes down to is taking that initial vision that you had and just clarifying it, refining it, making sure that that vision is as good as it can be. That's what the editing process is. I'm going to take you through my editing process. I have 5 stages. We'll go through each stage with examples so I can kind of give you an idea of what it looks like to edit a manuscript from my point of view, how I do it, the steps I take, why I take them in that order, and how that just makes a better manuscript and story. So here we go. Editing pass number one is all about the main character. A story is nothing without the main character, and so that's where we have to start. We have to make sure that the main character is right and as good as they can be in order for our story to be as good as it can be. So the first thing we're going to look at is the main character's want, their need, and the lie that they believe. And that is really kind of what drives the whole story. The internal struggle that they're dealing with is what drives the whole story, which is what drives the plot. And we want to make sure that these are clarified. Sometimes you discover that through the first draft. Sometimes you discover that through the second draft. Whenever you discover it, now we go back to the editing process. Now we make sure that we are clarifying that main character based on their want, their need, and their internal struggle so that they are clear to the reader. We want to make sure that their journey is clear. What is their goal? How are they going about getting that? What are they learning along the way to have that ultimate internal change and overcome that internal struggle? And how does the external events reflect that? We want to make sure that the main character is clear, all those like quirks and weirdities and oddities and things that they have going on with them, all those weird little characteristics make sense and are clear on the page. So if they have, like, for example, the main character Arden, in my story, The Wild Sky Legacy, she's a very anxious person, and so she's always like picking at her thumbs as like a nervous habit. And anytime that she experiences something where she's feeling anxiety, I want to make sure that that's on the page. Not all the time, but making sure that that comes clear that she has this like anxious tick that she engages with anytime that she's feeling really nervous. So making sure that those kinds of things are clear throughout the story, that the character is consistent throughout the story, that they are clear throughout the story, that their goals, their stakes, their urgencies are clear throughout the entire story. And we want to make sure that that main character is driving the story, that they have the agency, that they are making those decisions, and that the plot is the result of those decisions, that they have a choice, they choose to act, they make a decision, and because of that, therefore, these things happen. So, for example, in the Wild Sky Legacy, Arden, the main character, is all about agency. She begins as this people-pleasing, anxious person who does whatever her boyfriend says, who follows the rules, is not a rule breaker by any means or anything like that, and just follows the rules. And over the course of the story, she learns about her personal power, what she can do, and you see her start to make more and more decisions, sometimes good, sometimes bad, sometimes not. It's like super advised. But she makes those decisions and she comes to realize the power that she has inherent in herself and in the decisions that she can make. And so her internal struggle, her internal journey is all about discovering this personal agency. And then, of course, in the third act and the climax, exercising that personal agency by making a choice and a decision and an action that she never would have made at the very beginning. So, first pass, all about the main character, all about their internal struggle, all about clarifying the main character and making sure that they shine brightest and are driving the plot forward. Editing pass number two is all about all the other characters. It is my supporting character pass. It is my antagonist pass. It's making sure that all of the supporting characters, the antagonists, everyone else who's in the story has a purpose and needs to be there, because if they don't have a purpose and they don't need to be there, then we cut them, we get out of them, we get rid of them. And making sure that their characters are also clear, making sure that they are making consistent decisions based on who that character is and what they want. So, a lot of people only consider what the main character wants in a scene. If we are going to have fully fleshed out characters and believe that these people are real, all of them need to have wants, all of them need to have desires, all of them need to be on their own journeys. And that needs to be represented in the things that they say, the actions that they take, the decisions they make, all of those things. Their characters need to be clear throughout the story. We also need to establish what their purpose is in the story. Are they there to teach the main character something? Are they there to be a challenge? Are they there to help better define the world and all those things? We need to make sure that every character in the story is clear and has a purpose. So, for example, in the Wild Sky Legacy, one of my favorite characters, a lot of people's favorite characters, is Beto. And Beto is this like whimsical, eccentric kind of guy who gets excited all the time about, whatever he gets excited about. And his real purpose in the story is to help Arden grow from a dualistic mindset to a pluralistic mindset. He is there to open her mind. He constantly encourages her to ask questions, to view the bigger picture, to consider things that she had never considered before. Because when he meets her, she has this very us versus them mentality. She believes that we can separate the world into two camps. We can, there is good, there is bad, things are black and white. And that's not true. And Beto, over the course of the story, helps her see that, helps her realize that everything exists on a spectrum and that she needs to consider the spectrum and just kind of bring down these walls of moral absolutism. So that is kind of his role, his purpose in Arden's internal journey. That's why he's on the page. That's why he's there. And yes, he's a very fun character. And like, I love writing him and I love reading him and everything. But he has to have a purpose too. He can't just be the fun comic relief character, although that's also kind of Rowan. He needs to have a purpose. All secondary characters need to have a purpose. And that's what the second pass is all about, is making sure that all of your supporting characters and antagonists have a purpose and are clear to the reader, that they're consistent throughout. Editing pass number 3 is all about the plot. It's all about the stuff that happened. It's all about the external struggles and challenges that the main character goes through while they're going through this internal struggle. The real key with this pass is making sure that everything that happens is relevant and rhymes with the internal struggle of the main character. So any plot event, any plot points that happen, any places that they go, like all of this needs to be at the service of the main character and the internal struggle that they're going through. We also need to make sure that the external events are serving the themes of the story. So the things that kind of parallel the internal struggle of the main character. We need to make sure that, like one of the main themes of the Wild Sky Legacy is the people around us influence us. And we have Arden's journey and we have Subra's journey throughout the course of the story, and we get to see how the people that they are surrounded by really influence them. Themes have to be clarified. So whatever your themes are, whatever you've chosen for your themes for your story, they have to be clear throughout the entire plot, throughout the entire story structure. That's what we're doing in this pass. We're also making sure that the tone of the story is right. So for me, the Wild Sky Legacy is this like bright, more optimistic, more whimsical, hope punk, noble bright kind of tone for the story. And everything needs to reflect that. Even in moments of like tension and real struggle and even like sorrow or real hardship for the main character, that optimistic silver lining still needs to be present. It still needs to be there. So whatever you decide for the tone of your story, whatever you want that tone to be, that needs to be clear throughout the entire plot as well. That also needs to be addressed in the third revision of the story, in the third editing pass. So, for example, for me in the Wild Sky Legacy, as Arden is kind of discovering her agency and moving from a dualistic mindset to a pluralistic mindset, she goes to Azincourt, which is this like hidden city with all of these people from all over the planet that have escaped. They're refugees. They are kind of like living in peace, and she sees that this world and the systems of the world government have failed these people, that the world government is not what she thought it was, and that the system works really well for some people but not everybody. So she really needs to see that. And then on another note, later on in the story, she goes to a place called Falala Resort, and she sees the top 0.1% of, the world living in luxury, and they're all just like enjoying this beautiful beach setting and this food and music and all these things. And she's like, "What's the deal? I had to work since I was like 10 years old in the mines. Why are all these people just hanging out?" And Beto tells her, it's like, these people own the capital. They get to hang out. Like, they pay people to do the work for them. And that like really opens her mind. She's like, that is completely unfair. And they have this back and forth about like the morality of that. And, Beto continues to say that the world government, still does good in the world, but it's not as perfect as you thought it was. And he wants her to ask questions. He wants her to kind of dig deeper into the truth, to pull back the curtain and see what's really going on there. And both of those, both the trip to Azincourt and the trip to Falala Resort, aid her internal journey of discovering her agency, of asking questions, of shifting to a pluralistic mindset, just waking up to the reality of the world so that she can choose to become an active change agent in it. So the third editing draft is all about the plot. It's all about the things that happen and making sure that all of those things are in service to the main character's internal journey. The fourth editing pass is what I like to call the pump pass. So it's all about taking the emotional beats, the really cool scenes and locations that you go to, the characterization, and just pumping them up. Go back to all these moments where you introduced big characters, big places, thing or moments where the main character or characters were feeling something very deep or really processing, and just make it better. Go through, reread what you wrote, rewrite it in a more interesting way, in a more thought-provoking way, in a more enjoyable way for the reader. Just go through and really make sure that you're bringing these moments to life. This is where you throw paint on the canvas. You really dig deep into the colors of the paint. Personally, for me, because that can sound like a lot, I typically try and go through each chapter and make sure that in each chapter, the scene, there's at least one scene, one emotion, and one characterization pump in each chapter. So that way, it kind of brings like a focal point to like, what is the purpose of this chapter? What do I really want the reader to kind of latch onto and remember through this scene? That's what the fourth editing pass is all about. It's all about just making a writer better, making it more interesting, making it more colorful. It's an opportunity for you to really have fun as a writer and just really make your entire story more colorful and interesting to read. And finally, the fifth editing pass is your traditional like spelling, grammar, sentence structure, your like copy pass, I guess you could say. It's going through all the words and making sure you're wording good on the page. So we're talking spelling and grammar, we're talking sentence structure, we're talking active voice versus passive voice. We're talking about repetitive words. Are you using a word too many times, too frequently, too close together? Are you using filler words? Boy, I am so guilty of this. That and then was specifically, seriously, do like a search for the word was and see if you can write that sentence in a more interesting way and eliminate the word was. It makes your writing so much stronger and typically helps write in a more active voice as well. The fifth editing pass is all about grammar. It's all about spelling. It's all about the actual words on the page, the sentence structure, making sure that your sentences aren't too long or too short and that there's a variety. So it's always interesting for the reader to read, and just tightening your prose, tightening the story so that it flows really well and is a very enjoyable reading experience and clear reading experience. My main advice for this pass is to change the font of your story and read it out loud. That will really help your brain perceive it as something new, something different, and you will be amazed at the errors and things that you pick up during this pass that you're like, "Oh, why did I write that this way? Who wrote this? This couldn't have been me. I did not write this." And it will just help you reword certain sections and just tighten up your writing so that the entire book flows so much better. That's pass five. Those are my five editing passes. They have worked really well for me. Be very curious to see other people's editing process, but hopefully this helps you out and helps you write better stories.